Well, initially, the first inspiration came from seeing a photo pop up on my Facebook account many years ago now. A friend of mine who's a veteran filmmaker himself posted just an image of when he first moved to Melbourne in the 70s with his boyfriend. He was living in a house with literally eight gay women. And it was just like just one shot from their day-to-day life. And I was just like, oh, I want to be in this space. Like it felt like I want to be transported to this story, you know? Except in my case, I wanted it to shift to like the present day, this sense of like a kind of a sanctuary, safe space with for queer people. And I wanted to it wouldn't make sense in Australia in the present day, but in any part of Eastern Europe or Southern Europe, it very much does still make sense, if not more so. So, I set it in Macedonia as a result. And I grew up in a house with multiple generations living in the same household, and I just wanted to see that here as well. Like I wanted like a whole variety, like a melting pot, mini melting pot of people, who are constantly kind of at each other's throats, but love each other deeply, at the same time. And I just wanted to, yeah, capture that feeling and atmosphere and, send a viewer, transport them to this house, to this place for like a couple of hours.
Well, but you added the Roma aspect. the y- Tell us about all these layers that you added in your story. Why did you set it in Macedonia? Why deal? Uh, I mean, your movie is just phenomenal. You deal with all these issues of sexuality, of discrimination, of patriarchy. Uh, why did you set it all in Macedonia? Are you from Macedonia originally?
Yeah, I was born there, so I was 12 when I left, and then I go back a lot as well. So I'm still very much in that space. And to me, Macedonia is kind of a stand-in. I think like if you look at all of the 180 or 190 countries in the world, ranked based on GDP, it's about exactly 90. It's the middle. So the majority of queer people who live in the universe right now don't live in an developed economy where things are a little bit easier, The majority of us are actually kind of forced to build a life in a very difficult and different situation. And our lives aren't constant misery. There's also joy and music and craziness and other kind of, stupidity and hardship that you deal with that isn't just about your, gender or sexuality, but inevitably is partly shaped by that as well. So I was kind of driven by that, essentially. I think Macedonia is a stand-in for all of Eastern and Southern Europe, but I think you could transfer this story to many countries in the world and like the essence of it could still, translate essentially. And it struck a chord. Like I got a letter from India the other day that, someone felt very connected to this story. A letter. Sound 80 years old, a message online. And I think that's what I was looking for. There's a particular, socioeconomics shape life in a way that does even more than culture, I would say, or a country. And I think there's something very universal here. Like as much as it might feel very strange to like uh, Western audiences, Western European or American or Australian audiences, I think to a lot of people who live very far from Macedonia, it would still look like, oh yeah, this is what day-to-day life feels like. And in terms of the Roma aspect, I mean, I forget at what point which characters became Roma. I know Ali was always Roma in my head, partly because he was inspired by someone I know. And but also like the primary school, the elementary school I went to when I was little in Macedonia. I remember to this day, it was 36 kids in class, and nine of them were Roma. A quarter of, the kids I grew up with were Roma. Like this wasn't something that I saw as remarkable or unusual. It was just day-to-day reality. And I'm very much driven by sort of documenting a day-to-day reality in a particular time and place in all of my films, whether they're about witches or whether they're about, a bunch of chaotic queers. It's still that feeling of like, what does it feel like to be in this person's skin just in their day-to-day life, in this time and place. And yeah, it felt like very normal to me that a lot of the people in the house would be Roma. It feels very weird that a lot of the people I see on screen in all of ex-Yugoslavia are not Roma, but that's a whole other issue.
Well, it's, it touches on something that while many European uh, societies are aware of the whole dynamics of having Roma minorities in your country, some, particularly in the States, they have no clue about what the Roma, how you have, I mean, they certainly have minorities that are totally shut upon, but it's, but so can you comment on how the Roma sort of do what a lot of other, they sort of suffer, what they
Yeah,
suffer?
well, I mean, that's the thing though. In all of these other countries that don't necessarily have much of a Roma population, like th this is another one that, has like that there are parallels to. I do have to say though, I was very, I don't know why, but even I was a little bit disturbed, spending a few months in Macedonia again last year. And just for context, I'm there every year, so it's not like I haven't been to Macedonia. Like I'm there constantly. I just was there a couple months ago again. But I don't know, just especially while I was working on this story, just feeling like the way the status of Roma people was, it felt like being, in Arkansas in 1911. Like it was before there was even much of an awareness of how much a system is created and like oppressing a certain, aspect of the population. But there was just the level of the lack of awareness and understanding and empathy about what it means to be, born into this country or any of those surrounding countries in this time and place and still be discriminated in a way that like feels like 100 years past its use by date, frankly. And even back then, it was horrible. It was very unsettling. Like in my head, I remember when I first set out to, even write the film, much less shoot it, I was like, okay, how are other people gonna approach this? It's like, oh, it's like a gay story. It's about gay people, being oppressed, yada yada yada. And then, yeah, in the very early stages actually of casting, I was sort of like in my head, I'm like, I'm never driven by ideology purely. I'm kind of more driven by creative reasons to capture people's like lives on screen. But if there was an ideological, drive behind it, I was much more driven by making sure there's Roma characters who are seen as fully developed human beings. Because it's disturbing how little that happens. Still to this day. To me, like that, if I was I don't really think in terms of issues, God knows, but like if I did reduce it to an issue, that was kind of the top one, and being a queer person, I think everyone would have assumed, even me, that I would prioritize that. But like it became less important, frankly, as I was making the film.
What I found about your film is that the characters are all so well fleshed out and they're all so real. There's no stereotypes. They're all, if you could say, okay, there's that, well, whatever. There are no stereotypes. Are these people? Were you working with non-actors, or blend with actors and non-actors? Tell us, how did you put your cast together?
It's a mix. It's a mix. A lot of the older characters in the film are played by veterans, older in comparison. It's quite a young cast. So Anna Maria and Alina and Vladimir, who play, the characters of Dita and Suada and Tony, are all very experienced and highly trained actors. But for a lot of the Roma cast isn't, because there aren't many Roma trained actors anywhere in Eastern or Southern Europe. We checked. Um, and which is an unfortunate reflection again of socioeconomics and discrimination, all these things. But on the other hand, it doesn't mean there aren't amazing actors once you put them on screen. There's like natural raw talent, as I hope this film demonstrates. So we actually had two separate casting agents on this film. One, Katerina Grubach, was in charge of all the Roma characters, and then Milka Anchevska did the rest of the cast. So it was about half and half, I think. And Katerina, who did the Roma characters, spent like every single day in Stuttgart for like 3 months straight, 7 days a week. Not because even I was asking her to, she's just that kind of person, and she was determined to make sure that like, everyone, that if there's anyone else we should know about who's interesting, like, or like just eager or keen, like in Stuttgart, she will have met them, taken a photo. There was no traditional auditioning. Like no one had to like play a scene for me. They just it was just photos and they just spoke directly to camera for like 30 seconds about themselves. And that was all the casting there was. Um, so, very grateful to her and very grateful to, all the people who turned up to these non-auditions, let's just call them. But otherwise, in terms of the Roma cast on screen, apart from the character of Suada and the character of the grandmother, Hava, who is played by Sanela Emin, she is a trained actress with quite a bit of experience. Everyone else is non-actors, for lack of a better term. And I just do want to emphasize the Sanela who plays the grandma was not just, like I'm super grateful to her for being in that role, and also she added a lot to the script she had, but also off screen she helped with as an acting coach for a lot of the children, and she helps in terms of looking like helping us find locations and like connect with the community in Stuttgart, and she was also like a great creative force and a great friend of off screen as well.
Um, can you comment on your opening scene? It's one of the most fun things I've seen in a very long time. Was that? Tell us about it.
Yeah, thank you. It's sort of I'm not even sure if it was really in the screenplay. It definitely wasn't the opening scene in the screenplay. Essentially, I did know I wanted to have those three people singing on screen and a particular kind of song. And I also thought, what a great way. So none of those three people have ever been on set. And I just did like a mini test shoot a few days before we started filming properly. We just had like an hour and a half to just shoot that one scene. And it was we got the crew together just for practice, partly so the crew could learn because I tend to work very documentary style. It's a very different way of shooting to other people, so it's always better to see how it's done rather than just talk about it. But also just to like slowly introduce these three kids, as I call them, well, they're kind of like my children. Just introduce them to what it feels like to be on set, and gradually, with no pressure. And that scene didn't have to be in the film if it didn't work that day. And yeah, like it was bedlam on set. It was chaos because you try directing 5-year-old Jada Selim. She does not take direction. She gives direction. She's in charge. And essentially, like it was kind of semi-controlled chaos, and it was all very pleasant. But at the end of it, the crew was like, "How is it ever going to work as a movie?" And I edited that sequence overnight just to show them. And they were like, "Oh, okay." So it was much clearer to them why we're working in the way we are, but also it was clearer to me what the energy of the film would be because it came from the people on screen, and especially Jada herself. Because I remember very vividly showing that scene to my sound recordist, the day after we filmed it, and he was like, "Oh, okay, this looks great, but how the hell are you going to maintain this energy, throughout the film?" And I was like, let's find out. I don't even know because that energy was partly set by Jada, and like not just in terms of there was a way to simplify it and make it a little bit softer in terms of editing and so on and so forth, but also it was a gift. It was a gift to me, that energy that like this child, this wondrous genius child was giving me. And I'm like, either I run after that energy and try to somehow like turn it into a coherent movie, or I do the blander thing. And why would I do the blander thing? I'm gonna chase the energy, chase the fire in that little girl's eyes, essentially, and and build the film around it, essentially.
Well, my time's up, but really, really wonderful movie. All the best of luck to you, and I can't wait for the next one.
Oh, thank you so much, Michael. I can't wait for the next one either. Hope it's Search and Touch again.
When is it? Is it in the works? I'm sure. I'm sure.
Well, I've got two films at the moment that my producer is trying to finance. One of them we're casting. And yeah, I'm reassured things are going well, but until I'm on set, I don't believe anyone's reassurances. So we'll see. Hopefully, we get to film next year. But yeah, it's a complicated time if you're not writing things about multiverses or attractive 20 somethings getting hacked to pieces, and neither of those things are interesting to me. So